Part 66. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 651. The Kingdom of China and the Southwest Kingdom occupy Zhongzhou, and the Yingzhou Kingdom is an overseas archipelago country next to Zhongzhou. Among the three continents, there are still some small countries that depend on these big countries for survival. There is a mountainous area connecting Zhongzhou and Eurasia. Listening to Jinzhu's introduction to the world's general landforms, political kingdoms, and other systems, Lin Yi gradually gained a detailed understanding of the world. The level of civilization is similar to that of the Earth in the 21st century. Computers and the Internet have appeared, and mobile phones have become popular. But it has not yet reached the level of smartphones, and it is still some time behind Gurenkai. However, it was only a few years before the emergence of smartphones. Generally speaking, technology and weapons are very advanced, but there are no destructive nuclear weapons in this world, so peace does not exist for long. At this time, Lin Yi had some vague understanding of this world. The level of science and technology and culture is around the 2000s. But nuclear energy technology did not appear. It seems that there is no research direction in nuclear energy in the world. No radioactive elements were found either. In other words, the world is destined to be turbulent because nuclear power cannot bring peace to the world. Without absolute strategic deterrence, human nature will probably lead to continued wars. Then is the country of China where we are powerful. Jin nodded. China is currently one of the top 3 most powerful countries in the world. The weapons and equipment are very advanced, there are several important seaports, and maritime trade is also very prosperous. But the only problem is that China is adjacent to another superpower, the Rakshasa Empire, and also borders the southwest countries, Yingzhou Kingdom, and South Korea. The environment is not stable, and there are often frictions with 4 weeks. As a result, most of China's energy was contained in the confrontation. Well, this situation is like a tiger surrounded by wolves. Jin has temporarily joined the House of Everything, which at least eliminates some of the threats. The next step is to see how we can walk in this world safely. While he was thinking, Jinzhu stood nearby, respectfully waiting for Lin Yi's instructions. He has naturally entered the role of a servant and begun to regulate his behavior. Lin Yi had some vague ideas about how to walk in this world, and his eyes fell on Jinzhu. First I give you a gold coin, and you exchange it for the money of this world. Then move the circuits and network cables into the Wanqi house. This is your first task. As he spoke, a gold coin appeared in his hand. With a flick, it flew towards Jin. Jin had quick eyes and quick hands, and he grabbed the gold coin in one fell swoop. There was a desire for money in his eyes. At this time, Lin Yi's voice sounded in his ears, "Stop embezzling for me, use it all for work." Jin smiled awkwardly, the desire in his eyes quickly fading. "Don't worry, store manager, I know what's appropriate." Jin is a 50-year-old middle-aged man. He has experienced all kinds of life and seen all kinds of people. He knew very well what to do when and never acted arrogantly. Ring ring ring. Watching his retreating back, Absinthe appeared silently behind Lin Yi. "Store manager, aren't you afraid that he will take the money and run away?" "Run? Where can he run? And is he willing to run?" "Not everyone can resist the temptation of immortality. A person like him has matured into a mature person and has seen countless prosperity. Do you really think he loves money as much as his life?" When Absinthe heard this, there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. "Isn't it?" "Not at all, because in my eyes, even if there are mountains of gold coins in front of him, his heart actually didn't even beat. He doesn't care about those gold mountains at all. What he cares about is why do these gold mountains suddenly appear next to him. There was absolutely no warning. I let him see the supernatural power, that's why he signed the contract so readily. He's not stupid at all. On the contrary, he is a very shrewd person. Hearing this, Absinthe showed a look of surprise on his face. He seemed to have no idea that Jin was such a person, and he hid it very well. He took a deep breath, with a hint of coldness on his face. Interesting, it seems I have met another opponent. Wanchai Wu is not peaceful on the surface. For example, Kueju always has his own thoughts in his mind. He desperately wanted to get rid of Lin Yi's control, but it was impossible. The contract has already firmly restricted his future, unless there are huge benefits that can make Lin Yi let him go. Vodka was just lurking quietly. Although he was very obedient, the strange prison where he appeared was not simple at all. It's full of unpredictable dangers and mysterious monsters. People from such a place would never stay in Lin Yi's shop so willingly. Lafite red wine also has a mysterious origin. If given the chance, these three guys would definitely get rid of Lin Yi's control immediately. Therefore, there are often all kinds of strange overt and covert fights between these three guys in the Wanchai Wu. Although they did not dare to disobey Lin Yi's order, they never looked down upon others. Various verbal suppressions are common, but Brandy will not tolerate them. Relying on his special status, he always sneers at them, and even issues orders for them to swallow the bitter fruit of doing evil. For example, now, Lafite red wine has been ordered by Brandy to wash all the cups. Lafite red wine looked reluctant, but had to wash the cups. Half of his body was submerged in the sink, full of anger. Lin Yi glanced at Absinthe and continued to look out the French window. He was looking forward to Jin pulling the circuit and network cable into the Wanchai Wu, so that he could really start to understand this world. At this time, a dance party was being held in Wanjin City. Celebrities from all walks of life, politicians and businessmen gathered here, and they were all talking about it. Soon the protagonist of the banquet appeared, the governor of Wanjin City Zhang Tianyu. He appeared on the second floor of the banquet venue and walked step by step along the stairs towards the main venue of the banquet. He seemed like a god king, attracting everyone's attention. He seemed to have an inexplicable power, which made people around him cast their eyes on him involuntarily. Indistinctly, there seemed to be a vague figure reflected in the depths of his eyes, and this vague figure did not seem to exist in this world. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 652. He seemed to exist in another wonderful state and latitude, but he exuded a power that affected the consciousness of everyone around him. Zhang Tianyu looked to be in his 40s, and he looked strong, 1.9 meters tall, with well-proportioned muscles, and a faint smile on his face, giving people a feeling of spring breeze. He seemed to have mysterious power, and his voice was a little magnetic. Welcome everyone to my banquet. Everyone have fun. As his voice fell, the music that had stopped at the banquet sounded again, and the sound of clinking glasses continued to echo. His voice seemed to have some kind of magic, and everyone naturally began to enjoy the banquet. And he stood in the crowd, his eyes swept over several people at the banquet. They were filled with a wonderful atmosphere, attracting his attention. You are the young heroes who have emerged in this martial arts conference. Zhang Tianyu approached them with a kind atmosphere, and his whole body was filled with a strong affinity. These people sat in a corner of the banquet hall, and they were filled with a breath of strangers. Indistinctly, their chi blended with each other, as if they were fighting. And the arrival of Zhang Tianyu broke this confrontation and also attracted their attention. There were a total of 4 people sitting here, 1 woman and 3 men. They all looked only about 20 years old, and each of them exuded a mysterious aura. Or full of domineering or ethereal, or cold as a god, or natural. This aura is not energy, nor aura, nor the power brought by the body, but just a mysterious state from the heart. They looked at Zhang Tianyu, and a hint of surprise appeared in the eyes of the 4 people. One of them was a man who was 2 meters tall and had very well-proportioned muscles. His skin had a faint metallic texture and a slightly dark complexion. As soon as he opened his mouth, he was full of supreme domineering, as if everything around him had to revolve around him, an inexplicable power that affected the cognition of everyone around him. Interesting, Governor Zhang Tianyu. This is a power that seems to come from the mind, invisible and traceless. And this power seems to be completely unaffected by the spirituality of this world. Because this is not a substantial force, but a spiritual influence. Faced with this name-calling, Zhang Tianyu was not angry at all, with a faint smile on his face. This person should be Mr. Li Qinqin, he is domineering to the bone marrow, it seems that he is not far from being a saint and knowing clearly. Saint and knowing clearly, using the false to become true, there is still a long way to go. People's hearts are like iron, how can it be so easy to achieve? Li Qinqin responded lightly. If it were an ordinary person, it would probably be in the clouds and fog, not quite understanding. One of the women was filled with a sense of ethereal nothingness. Although she was sitting there, she seemed to be non-existent, making people want to ignore her involuntarily. She looked at Zhang Tianyu, with a trace of solemnity and doubt in her eyes. But she said nothing, just looked at it calmly. Zhang Tianyu raised the wine glass in his hand slightly, I hope you have a good time tonight. The four people also nodded slightly, without speaking. Zhang Tianyu smiled slightly, turned around and left very gentlemanly, as if he just came to say hello. After he left, the woman with the ethereal breath slowly said, there is something wrong with this person. He is obviously not a martial arts master, but he seems to have touched the power of the saint and knowing. What do you feel? The man who was calm and natural said slowly, this person's mind presents a strange appearance in my heart, a strange existence shrouded in darkness. In this appearance, I can't feel anyone's breath. He seems to be another creature. It's very strange. I have never seen this before. The man who followed the natural way was wearing a monk's clothing. He was very leisurely and looked like an immortal. The other person was cold and filled with a noble breath. It seemed to be a supreme but cold and ruthless feeling. If you really want to use a word to describe it, it would be a high god. This person's mind is very strange. It is twisted and not like a human being. It's like a monster. It's really strange. This is the first time I have met such a person. The four people all frowned. They are all seated players in this martial arts conference. Each of them has honed their martial arts to the limit, and they are only one step away from entering the legendary realm of sainthood. That is a supreme spiritual realm, and once you enter it, you will have all kinds of incredible powers. Although they have touched this power now, it is only the prototype and fur, and it is the top if they can affect one or several ordinary people. They don't know what the real realm of sainthood is like, but they heard that it is very powerful. At this time, Zhang Tianyu was holding a wine glass and meeting some big figures at the dinner one by one. Although he himself is the biggest figure, he has no airs at all and is friendly and polite to everyone. Just when the banquet was halfway through, Zhang Tianyu's face suddenly changed slightly. However, he hid this change very well, put down the wine glass in his hand, and disappeared quietly outside the door of the banquet. No one even noticed his disappearance, everything seemed to be taken for granted. Standing in a garden, his face looked slightly solemn and he slowly closed his eyes. If there was nothing, his mind seemed to have entered a wonderful place. It was deep here, and his whole body was shrouded in a faint black smoke, making it difficult to see what it really looked like. Opposite him, an illusory being shrouded in black smoke also appeared. On the 10th day of the celestial beings, according to the decree of the God Emperor, an unknown entity has arrived in Wanjin city. After the calculations of the God Emperor, it seems that the other party poses a huge threat to us celestial beings, and at the same time it also has huge benefits. You must find this extraterrestrial visitor and inform the God Emperor as soon as possible. The God Emperor will make a decision. I will obey the Emperor's orders for 10 days. Zhang Tianyu slowly opened his eyes, his mind had returned, and there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. The God Emperor was alarmed. What kind of extraterrestrial visitor is this? In 3 days, some mysterious and ancient beings have come to some conclusions and have set their sights on Wanjin city. During the banquet, Li Qinqin and 4 other people had already stood up from their seats and planned to leave. Zhang Tianyu is just an episode for them, they can pay attention to it, but they will not care about it for a long time. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 653. After receiving the order from the God Emperor, Zhang Tianyu had no time to care about these people, but quickly returned to his office. In fact, he was also assigned by the official agency of China to find the aliens. Originally, he thought it was an ordinary meteorite fall or a wonderful extraterrestrial phenomenon, and didn't take it seriously. But when the order of the God Emperor was conveyed to him, he realized that this mysterious alien must have extraordinary significance. He quickly conveyed his order to all the companions under his jurisdiction in Wanjin city. After conveying the order, he stood alone in front of the window of the office, looking at the prosperous lights outside, with a hint of worry in his eyes. This prosperous and beautiful scenery will not last long, but only we, the celestial beings, can decide the future. Celestial beings are a mysterious existence among humans, and their origins are even more difficult to investigate. Zhang Tianyu is just one of the many celestial beings. At this time, on the top floor of a high-rise building in Wanjin city, 13 people gathered here and were holding a round-table meeting. The leader was the owner of the building, the chairman of Tiandao Group, Huang Changming. But this man also exuded an inhuman feeling, looking at the other 12 people present with cold eyes. All of them exuded the same aura, cold and ruthless. Huang Changming said, received the order from the demon ancestor, and made every effort to find the fallen alien. The other party seems to have something that the demon ancestor needs, something that can help us break all shackles. Everyone use all your strength to find it, don't waste the demon ancestor's time. Yes, Lord Demon General. At this time, in Wanjin city, in a temple, a skinny old monk sat quietly in the main hall, his face calm, as if he was thinking about something, and there seemed to be countless wisdom in his eyes. The whole hall was filled with a peaceful atmosphere, the 4 elements were empty, and cause and effect were reincarnated. Even at first glance, it seemed that there was infinite Buddha light filling the entire hall, but when you looked closely, there was nothing. At this time, the old monk's eyes showed a slight solemnity. Demon, have you started to act? What did they sense? They actually showed their existence so unconcealed. 2 general-level existences, dozens of soldiers-level existences. It seems that I have to inform my friends in the martial arts world. Thousands of years of war are not so easy to end. His eyes slowly closed again, as if he was lost in thought. And in the far north of China, the distant Tiandi Mountains, this is the legendary hometown of all gods, the residence of gods. In the distant ancient times, there were countless legends and myths, but no one had ever really seen the existence in the myths. They seemed to be just myths, eternal myths. But this did not prevent it from becoming the source of the entire Chinese mythology history. At this time, a peerless Salary walked out of the Tiandi Mountains. Wearing ancient brocade robes, with a straight face and crystal skin, the mysterious man was like a beautiful jade. He looked only about 20 years old, and exuded an inexplicable sacredness. Indistinctly, he seemed to see a god with a leopard head and a human body. This god held fire in his left hand and ice in his right hand, and his whole body was filled with infinite mysterious majesty. He walked out of this mountain range, looking at the distant land with calm eyes. How many changes have taken place in the land of China? I wonder what the picture is now. People in the world are so ignorant, indulging in the world of mortals. If you can't become a god, you will end up with a pile of bones. Thinking of this, the mysterious man shook his head slightly, and he walked slowly on the land in a high crown and formal dress. Every step was 3 feet and 30 inches, and it was accurate. The place he walked on was rugged, but there was no trace of dirt and ash on his feet. He was as pure as a fairy who was not stained by the world of mortals, and he had controlled himself to an unimaginable degree. Walking like the wind indistinctly, he seemed to be in a state of unity with everything around him at any time. Whether it is rocks, soil, rivers, oceans, or energy substances in the air, they all seem to have some kind of connection with him. And this connection seems to allow him to drive everything and produce some supernatural phenomena that humans cannot do. For example, the dust now seems to be avoiding him spontaneously, every time his footsteps fall on the ground. The dust will naturally roll to the side, and a lotus-like shape will form under his feet. This is a very mysterious method. This person in a high crown and formal dress has an unpredictable breath in every move. He is heading towards Wanjin City, and it seems to be for those outsiders. And it's not just the land of China that is changing. There are also overseas beings who seem to have noticed some changes and are sending mysterious people to approach here. Among them, Dahan country and Yingzhou country are the most interested, and some secret existences in their countries have also sent people. At the same time, these two countries are also rapidly connecting the Rakshasa Empire and the southwestern countries, and seem to be planning something. The international atmosphere suddenly became tense, although on the surface it was calm and nothing happened. In the Wanchaiwu, a worker was connecting the wires and network cables here with a surprised look on his face. He was a little surprised, why there was a house in this alley. He was the person who specialized in managing the circuits and networks in this area, but he had never noticed this place. When Jin found him, he thought the other party was joking. But when he saw the money that Jin took out, he quickly chose to believe it. After completing this order, he will have a lot of things to benefit from. Well, connecting wires and networks is actually very simple. Inside the Wanchaiwu, there were originally its own wires and network lines, and now it is just a matter of connecting the main line to the Wanchaiwu. Other people in the Wanchaiwu will naturally operate it. Brandy used to specialize in managing these things, and he knows a little about these things. When all the lines were installed, the worker also received a salary that satisfied him. Finally, with the Wanchaiwu reconnecting to the store's network, brand new TVs and computers belonging to this world were also bought back. Basically everyone was given a computer, which was placed in their respective bedrooms. The TV replaced the original one and was still hanging in the hall. At this time, the TV was turned on and a news story was playing. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 654. A large gold mine was discovered in the sea 100 kilometers outside Wanjin City. According to exploration, the gold reserves are at least 100 tons. This area is close to the sea and is located in a shallow sea area. Our country's detectors have clearly detected it and are ready to exploit it at any time. Hearing this, Lin Yi's brows jumped slightly. Interesting, the first news we saw was actually a gold mine. Taiwan novel network rightward arrow. When will gold mining be news on TV? Shouldn't we dig deep into this kind of gold mine? There was a trace of strangeness in his eyes, but he soon understood why. Because the sea area overlaps the sea areas of Dahan State and Yingzhou State, the two countries have declared ownership of the mineral deposits. Our country has also issued a solemn statement claiming absolute sovereignty over that sea area. Currently, all three countries have dispatched warships, and the risk of war is rapidly increasing. Looking at the contents of the news, Jinjiu on the side smiled and said. Lin Yi smiled when he heard this and said, I see, the gold mine is just an excuse. I'm afraid these guys are eyeing China and want an excuse to invade by force. When Jinjiu heard this, his expression suddenly changed. It's impossible, Wanjin City is the most important city in China. This is an important port for economic and foreign trade. Han country and Yingzhou country want to stir up trouble here? That's just asking for death. The millions of soldiers in China will never agree. Hearing this, Lin Yi shook his head slightly and said with a smile, it's not that simple. I'm afraid it's not just these two countries behind it, but also the shadows of the Rakshasa Empire, Britain and America, the Kingdom of Bavaria, and the Iron Kingdom. Perhaps these countries have reached a certain level of agreement and are preparing to carve up China. When Jin heard this, his face was full of disbelief. How is that possible? Nothing is impossible, based on the information you told me. The most powerful countries in the world are basically white. The only country that can truly be called a powerful country among the yellow people is China. Yingzhou Kingdom and Han Kingdom are just two second-rate countries in a corner of the country. They have small land and limited resources, and their future development will definitely have huge restrictions. As long as China is defeated, the entire world will become the territory of white powers. All yellow and black people will become slaves of the white people. Serve their strength. If I were the ruler of the white race, I would do the same thing. Eliminate the most threatening countries of other races, dismember each other into small countries, check and balance each other, and sow discord. Ultimately, these countries of other skin colors are completely trapped in a confrontation and unable to extricate themselves. Without huge amounts of land and resources, these countries will always be second-rate. And the first-class countries will always have only white people, and they will become the masters of the world. After hearing Lin Yi's description, Jinju's expression changed drastically, and he even said a little pale, no way. Do these countries really dare to do this? Why don't you dare? There are no weapons of destruction in this world. Without the deterrence of weapons of mutual destruction, war can break out at any time. Lin Yi, who has experienced the era of peace on Earth, is naturally very aware of the development of the world. From World War I to World War II, war broke out whenever the economy was not going well. By passing on internal conflicts and plundering external resources to survive the crisis. According to Jin's description, it seems that the economies of various countries have encountered some problems in recent years, and the basic conditions for the outbreak of war have been met. The emergence of the current gold mine just gives everyone an excuse. A reshuffled war may come at any time and affect countless countries. Lin Yi was sitting at the desk in the bedroom, looking at the computer quietly. He is looking up various technologies, physics, chemistry, and other knowledge in this world. Lin Yi looked at this information and an idea flashed in his mind. A lot of the knowledge I have is in line with the rules of this world. However, there is a certain degree of difference from the scientific knowledge learned on Earth. Although the overall difference is not big, it represents a different world and different rules. For example, the speed of light in this world is 400,000 kilometers per second. On the Earth, it is 300,000 kilometers per second. There is a direct difference of 1/3, which is purely caused by the differences in the world. Lin Yi quickly absorbed it and revised his understanding of the world. With the source of true life, all this knowledge will be understood by him. To put it simply, Lin Yi can learn all the scientific knowledge currently known in the world in a very short time. Not just memory, but complete understanding. He himself is equivalent to an almighty scientist who can engage in research in any field. However, when browsing various information on the internet, what interested him most was not the science and technology, but the history of the world. This world also has myths and legends, the heaven and earth mountains, the home of all gods. The mountain of the gods in the west, the great fault in prehistoric history, and the history of countless wars in ancient times were all quickly absorbed and understood by Lin Yi, while piecing together a rough history. Then he discovered a lot of things that didn't make sense. In some ancient battlefields, there are often records of one person leading thousands of troops to defeat tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of troops. And the frequency of this record is very high. Basically, no matter in the East or the West, there will always be 4 or 5 times in 100 years. This is obviously abnormal. According to the history of the Earth, this is impossible to do. In the historical development trajectory of the Earth, although there have been thousands of troops defeating 100,000, it was achieved under special conditions. There may be only 1 or 2 times in 1,000 years. But it is not the case in this world. There are hundreds of records of leading thousands of troops and defeating 100,000 troops in a dignified manner. Such people are called gods in the East and heroes in the West. There are also special titles in history. When Lin Yi saw this content, he was very shocked. Because this world devours all spirituality, that is to say, it is absolutely impossible to allow the existence of supernatural power. At present, all the powers he has come into contact with, except for the weird power, all of them need to absorb external energy and transform it into their own power to produce supernatural power. And there is a key that cannot be bypassed in all these powers, that is, spirituality. Even if it is a strange power without spiritual existence, using it in this world will increase the consumption by 100 times. And the God General is a completely supernatural existence, which should not exist according to reason. Is it unique to this world? A supernatural power that adapts to the rules of this world. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 655. Interesting. If you can master this power, you can avoid this spiritual devouring world and exert combat power beyond ordinary people. Lin Yi felt slightly interested. We need to check it carefully. Thinking of this, he entered generals and heroes into the search engine. Suddenly, names appeared one after another in the search engine. They were dazzling existences in ancient times, and they made countless brilliant achievements. They are remembered by everyone and influenced one period of history after another. I've been browsing the information on the web, but haven't found anything substantial. No one seems to be analyzing the source of their power. What's going on? There is absolutely no description of their inhuman powers. Could it be that someone is covering up this information? It seems that it is impossible and difficult to learn the truth through normal channels such as the internet. Maybe I have to find a way to get in touch with the higher UPS in this world, so I can figure out what's going on. He took a deep breath, and there was a trace of thought in his eyes. What we need to solve now is how to leave the Wanchaiwu view and truly experience what this world is like. Maybe use a clone. Thinking of this, Lin Yi made a decision in his heart. He sat cross-legged on the bed and began to operate a wonderful method. The spiritual possession technique separates a trace from one's own soul, and then forges it with immortal energy, turning it into a soul seed. This seed can parasitize a body without any consciousness at all, forming a pure clone. Although it will not have any physical power, it will have great growth potential. It is those sects in the Red Lotus realm that specialize in cultivating the secret method of the second soul. Legend has it that someone cultivated the 9th soul, and then the 9 souls merged into one, allowing the true spirit to forcibly break through the threshold of the heavenly path. However, from ancient times to the present, there are only a handful of people who can truly cultivate the 9 souls. That is equivalent to cultivating 9 peak masters of the Earth Immortal Dao, and each Earth Immortal Dao Yuan Shen must condense its own spirituality. In the end, the 9 great souls and 9 spiritual realms also merged into one, relying on their powerful spirituality to impact the heavenly path and forcibly become immune to the catastrophe of thunder. However, this is also a method of death, and the probability of success is only a little higher than simply attacking the celestial path. But for those who have no hope of becoming immortals, this is the last chance. But now this method is just suitable for Lin Yi's current situation, allowing him to walk freely in this wonderful world. After the soul seeds were condensed, Lin Yi slowly opened his eyes. He raised his hand and waved, and a crystal coffin appeared in front of him. This is a vessel he refined, a vessel specially used to cultivate clones. He stood in front of the vessel, his right hand slightly extended, and a drop of golden blood slowly dripped. In an instant, the blood fell into the vessel, and at the same time, a majestic energy appeared in his hand and poured into the vessel. The vessel is filled with a milky white liquid, which is all specially prepared nutrient solution. It does not contain any energy or spirituality, it is simply provided for the clone to absorb and use. As the blood falls into these liquids, majestic energy is also injected into this drop of blood. One of Lin Yi's innate abilities was activated. Rebirth with blood. Absorbing energy and culture fluid, a mass of dark golden flesh is rapidly growing and dividing, while simultaneously becoming humanoid. In about a few minutes, a brand new human body appeared in the petri dish. This body is exactly the same as Lin Yi, without any difference, and even the structure of the genetic material in the body is also flawless. The only difference is that there is no energy in his body, and all the power that Lin Yi poured into him has been transformed into his body. The empty body is just suitable for this world and can walk in this world calmly. Lin Yi, who was standing in front of the cultivator, stretched out his hand and touched the body's eyebrows. The next moment, his eyebrows trembled slightly, and the soul seeds had entered the clone's body. At this time, the clone opened his eyes, and Lin Yi also had a new perspective. He saw himself and quickly adapted to this multitasking state. The horror of the immortal way is not only shown in strength, but also in the power of the soul. It is not a problem to use one mind for 2 purposes, 3 purposes, or even 1,000 purposes. Standing up from the culture vessel, Lin Yi felt this new body carefully, and an incomparable sense of emptiness rose from his body. There is no energy present in his body, only pure flesh and blood, an extremely powerful flesh and blood body. But Lin Yi had a hunch that the powerful material in this body would be lost. Even the genetic material that builds this body rapidly degrades. The genetic material of talent is not achieved overnight. It itself has an initial state, and a more perfect state that continues to evolve during the process of cultivation. Just like Brandy before training, although he had the talent to sense crises. But before he practiced, this talent basically didn't have much effect. The reason why this talent can appear is purely because after practicing, the talent has the support of energy, which allows the talent to evolve. When energy cannot sustain the existence of talents, these talents will naturally degrade accordingly. And the various organs born when the talent is perfect will also degenerate to their original state. This is a protective mechanism of talent. The activation of any talent must be supported by energy. If there is no such talent, when the energy cannot be supported, these talents will react to the body and even extract life to maintain the perfection of the talent. And when the talent has a degradation mechanism, it can prevent the talent from being too powerful and causing damage to the life of the talent owner. This is also the reason why the talent owner disappeared before the Red Lotus Realm spirit tide surged. At this moment, Lin Yi clearly felt that the talent in his clone was in a state of hunger. The genetic structure of the talent seemed to be stimulated by something and began to slowly release some special substances. Along with these special substances flowing into the organs or systems corresponding to the talent. His body's hunger was rapidly subsiding, and the result of this subsiding was that the organs began to rapidly degenerate and become normal human organ structures. It took only more than 10 minutes for the perfect talent to degenerate to the initial stage. This process shocked Lin Yi. However, after the degeneration was complete, Lin Yi felt that his body had completely turned into a mortal body and no longer possessed any special abilities. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 656. However, he can still feel some subtle special abilities in his body, although these special abilities can only work in his body. For example, his eyesight is a little stronger than that of ordinary people, his five senses of hearing are sharper than ordinary people, his strength has basically reached the limit of the human body, and his muscle fiber structure is also somewhat different from ordinary people. All of these special features are purely physical structural differences. To put it simply, his current body can be said to be the perfect human body limit, the result of the combined effects of 365 primary talents. He waved his arm slightly, and instantly a fist shadow broke the air in front of him, bringing up a faint white air wave. The air wave spread to a distance of 1 meter. With sonic punch speed and abundant physical strength, Lin Yi felt that he could stand up to dozens of ordinary people, basically equal to a humanoid beast. Well, now from the perspective of strength, at least it's not helpless. Feeling the power of the clone with satisfaction, Lin Yi's clone walked directly outside the House of Everything, while the main body continued to stay in the House of Everything. In the hall of Wanchaiwu, Lin Yi looked at Jin and said, "Come out with me and take me around Wanjin City." Jin has become a member of the House of Everything. He naturally knew that Lin Yi and the others could not leave Wanchaiwu at will, otherwise they would be drained of energy and spirituality, and eventually degenerate into mortals. And he also knew that Lin Yi and the others were from another world and were not natives of Blue Star. At first, he was shocked when he heard the news. He couldn't believe that there was another world in this world. And these aliens actually came to Blue Star, which shocked him very much. However, he is now a member of Wanchaiwu, and it is impossible for him to reveal this kind of news, otherwise the first Wanchaiwu will not let him go. Now he can only become a member of the Wanchaiwu View. Otherwise, his end will be very bad. Ring ring ring. The door of the Everything House was pushed open, and two figures walked out of the Everything House. Lin Yi was wearing ordinary casual clothes from this world and looked like an ordinary young man. Behind him was Jinju, who was also wearing casual clothes, following Lin Yi step by step. Wanjinchinj is very prosperous, with busy traffic and neon lights shining everywhere on the road. It's now around 7 p.m., the sky has become slightly darker and the sun has set. Both sides of the bustling streets are lined with a wide variety of shops. The flow of people coming in and out are all enjoying their consumption, and their faces are more or less filled with smiles and joy. Most people seem to be doing pretty well, and it's a healthy and prosperous world. However, you can still see some beggars in some street corners. Obviously this is also a world that follows the principle of the weak and the strong, but it has become an obscure way like the earth. Lin Yi's eyes faintly passed over these people, his eyes were shining with the light of true destiny, and he was observing everyone on the street. There are ancient mysterious figures in this world who are called gods or heroes. If ordinary people want to find such figures, they will undoubtedly be looking for a needle in a haystack. But for Lin Yi, with the help of the true life principle, he may not be unable to find this special existence among the crowd. Manager, over there is the highest place in Wanjin City, the Oriental Pearl Tower. It is said to be 333 meters high. It took 5 years to build. Standing on it, you can overlook the entire Wanjin City and the sea. It can be said to be the most scenic place in Wanjin City. There is also a high-altitude restaurant up there. I heard that a reservation costs at least 3,000 Chinese dollars. The consumption power of China is similar to that of Earth's soft currency. 3,000 Chinese dollars is almost equal to a month's salary of an ordinary person. Lin Yi smiled, it seems that only high-end white-collar workers can afford it. Come on, let's go up and take a look. Jinjiu nodded and immediately led Lin Yi towards the Oriental Pearl Tower, which was 100 meters ahead. The Oriental Pearl Tower has a sightseeing elevator that goes directly to the top. It costs 50 yuan to use it once. Many people who come to Wanjin City will go up once to enjoy the scenery of the entire Wanjin City. The two of them spent 100 yuan. Jinjia bought the tickets with some heartache, and stood in the sightseeing elevator with Lin Yi. The sightseeing elevator didn't rise very fast. In the process, he could still see the stretched panorama of Wanjin City. A port city by the sea. A dozen kilometers away is a hazy and huge port. Dozens or hundreds of various ships are docked outside the port. Further ahead is the hazy ocean shrouded in darkness. It is a hot day now, and the water vapor that evaporated during the day on the sea has not completely fallen. The typical coastal city climate is very beautiful. At this time, there were many people in the sightseeing elevator. They were chattering, and some even took out their cameras to take pictures. Lin Yi and Jinjiu stood in a corner, just observing the outside quietly. 3 minutes passed in the blink of an eye, and they finally arrived at the top of the Oriental Pearl Tower. There was a disc platform here to accommodate people to enjoy the scenery. However, this platform can accommodate no more than 200 viewers at a time, for safety reasons. After all, this place is hundreds of meters above the ground. If something goes wrong, people will die. Walking out of the elevator, you will see a platform made of tempered glass. Even the outermost circle of the ground is supported by tempered glass and steel structure. One side of the platform seems to be a special high-altitude restaurant, and the other side is a place where tourists can walk freely. Lin Yi's eyes swept casually, and then looked at the entire Wanjin city. There are beautiful scenery everywhere, brightly lit, countless lights shuttled on the road, and the night view was extremely beautiful. A long river runs through the entire city and connects to the sea. There are lights on both sides of the long river, making the river look very beautiful. This is a very prosperous world, Lin Yi's heart was thoughtful. At this time, Lin Yi's eyes swept across the direction of the high-altitude restaurant and suddenly paused. Hey, this is... Lin Yi's eyes showed a trace of solemnity, even shock, because he saw a wonderful person. If from his perspective, it was just a strong man who had undergone rigorous training. There was no fat on his body, all of which were extremely delicate muscles and fascia. The muscles, bones, fascia, and internal organs are completely different from the body structure of ordinary people. With strong blood transport capacity, each muscle fiber is as tough as steel wire. There is no fat in the internal organs, which are all composed of fascia and muscles. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 657. If Lin Yi's current body is the limit of ordinary people, then the person he saw in front of him has surpassed the limit of ordinary people through the change of body structure. In terms of physical strength alone, the other party's body is not as strong as his current body with pure physical structure. But the other party's structure is more perfect than his body structure. The other party pushed his body to the physical limit by making the structure between body tissues perfect. This is almost impossible, according to reason. But under Lin Yi's true destiny, he quickly saw how the other party did it. The reason is actually very simple, that is, the subtle change of muscle structure. In the end, the strength of the muscles increased several times, and at the same time eliminated the fat in the body that had little effect except storing energy and defending against cold. The most peculiar thing is that the body's fascia was stimulated and grown. Covering the internal organs under the skin, it became a tough protective structure with far stronger defense and cold resistance than fat. At the same time, the energy storage substances in the blood, liver, and muscles were extremely condensed, even surpassing the effect of fat. Moreover, the opponent's bones and bone marrow have changed to a certain extent. If you use one sentence, it is absolutely perfect. The perfection of this person's body has penetrated into every corner of the body, without the slightest damage, just like the flawless body of a human immortal. Even all the energy channels and nodes of the opponent's body are lit up with a faint light. This world will devour the spirituality in the energy, and eventually make a person unable to control any energy at all. But the human body has its own way of conducting chemical energy. This energy itself has no spirituality, but only runs according to the body woven by the genetic structure. In Lin Yi's words, this is the basic energy operation to maintain life. It is an instinct and has nothing to do with spirituality. But now this person seems to have mastered this pure energy flow through exercise. Although this energy is very weak, it is only an invisible force, and it cannot even act outside the body, and can only run along a fixed trajectory. But when the person in front of him sensed this energy cycle, it did cause a slight fluctuation in the energy cycle in the body, forming a wonderful human energy field. This energy field makes every node of this energy cycle brighter through the influence of the spirit. When all the energy circulation nodes of the human body are affected by the spirit and become bright, this field becomes stronger and stronger. And in this spirit, Lin Yi saw something familiar, something he had only seen in the high priest of the Tianling clan. The spiritual power extending from the soul. Can people in this world cultivate the soul? Lin Yi's heart was full of shock, because when he stepped into the Tianxian Dao, he found that even the Tianxian Dao, the first two levels seemed to have not yet touched the soul. It was just that the spirituality condensed in the Yuan Shen, after being immune to energy damage, a wonderful structure appeared. This structure allowed Lin Yi's spirituality to perceive the existence of the soul to a certain extent. The cultivation of the soul seems to be a very mysterious direction. At present, Lin Yi knows that only the high priest of the Tianling clan and his own Yuling Sutra can do it. But now he has seen the third way. Is this to transform the body structure through cultivation, perfect the body, affect the spirit, and finally extend to the spiritual level? Lin Yi's true destiny solution quickly analyzed the mystery. However, he can only see the result, but not how they complete the structure from body to spirit to mind. So that's it? Is this the supernatural power of this world? Matter has limits, but the mind does not. The brilliance of the true destiny in Lin Yi's eyes rose again, reaching an unimaginable height in an instant. A large amount of spiritual waves were rapidly consumed, and he observed the man in the high-altitude restaurant more carefully. He was looking at the source of the other party's spirit, which was a wonderful level and dimension. Indistinctly, he seemed to see a world of pure emptiness, with a faint light flickering in it. It seemed to be a dragon, rolling and wandering in the void, and there seemed to be an illusory ocean around it, forming a territory of its own in this dark void. The level of the mind. Indistinctly, Lin Yi thought, this world holds the key to the door to the mind. If I can open this door, maybe I can start to deduce the seventh true destiny of the Yiling Jing. Indistinctly, Lin Yi had a hazy premonition. A faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It seems that I have to find a way to contact him. He looked at Jin. Let's go to the restaurant, I want to meet someone there. When Jin heard this, his face fell. Manager, this will cost a lot of money again. Lin Yi did not pay attention to Jin's sad face. The other party was more obsessed with money than him, and was a typical example of money over life. After a few steps, they came to the high-altitude restaurant, and the waiter enthusiastically led the two into it. The high-altitude restaurant of the Oriental Pearl Tower is very luxurious, and not everyone is willing to come here to consume. In addition, today is Wednesday, which is not a busy day, so the restaurant is very empty. After the two entered the restaurant, Lin Yi's eyes fell directly on the man he had just watched. That was a handsome man in black casual clothes. He was filled with the aura of a nobleman. He just sat lazily on the sofa, but he seemed to be the master of the whole world, attracting the attention of many people in the restaurant. In particular, some beautifully dressed women frequently cast their gazes, and some of them were eager to go over and chat. But in the end, these people did not take action, because every time they wanted to get up and chat, they would inexplicably feel ashamed. Facing this noble man, they seemed to be mud legs in the mud, not on the stage. Appearing in front of the other party seemed to pollute the other party's eyes. When Lin Yi saw this scene, he already understood why. Because the energy field on this person condenses the spirit and spiritual will of this person, it is a noble and boundless aura. It will naturally suppress ordinary people at the spiritual and mental level. Anyone who wants to do anything to him, whether good or evil, will have all kinds of self-denial thoughts. Until I finally gave up the idea. In simple terms, I surrendered to the enemy without fighting, and the enemy didn't even know why. This is a very terrifying mental influence, and people with weak mental will cannot resist it at all. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 658. At this time, in Lin Yi's eyes, almost everyone in the restaurant was affected by the other party. Except for him, no one could avoid this kind of spiritual and mental influence. This influence covers an area of about 30 meters before and after. This is an inexplicable influence, and it doesn't even leave any traces in this world. As long as you see this noble man within this range, you will naturally be affected. Jin, who was following Lin Yi, was originally walking towards this noble man with Lin Yi. But he suddenly stopped halfway, with an expression of shame on his face. He felt that if he got closer to this noble man, he would be blaspheming him and disrespecting him. Lin Yi glanced at him, ignored him, and walked a few steps to the opposite side of the noble man's seat. Puff. Lin Yi sat down directly. The noble man had been looking at a book in his hand, but when Lin Yi sat down, he raised his head. It was a pair of extremely cold and noble eyes, as if everything in the world was just an ant in his eyes. He is the master of the world, the overlord of the ocean, the supreme dragon. When he saw Lin Yi, his eyes lit up slightly. Huh, interesting. You seem to be just an ordinary person, but you give me a very powerful feeling. It's really interesting that you are not affected by my mind. I have never met someone like you. What's your name? Lin Yi smiled slightly. My name is Lin Yi, the manager of the Eurozwia. This is my business card. The man gently took Lin Yi's business card with his right hand. His right index finger is slender, his skin is like jade, with smooth wrinkles and only a faint trace of skin, without a trace of sweat hair. This should not be a pair of men's hands at all. It should be a pair of women's hands, smooth and slender. The man took Lin Yi's business card, glanced at it, and then looked at Lin Yi and said slowly, "Hello, my name is Li Jingtian. I wonder what Mr. Lin wants to talk to me about. I am a businessman, and my business is to realize the wishes of my business partners. For example, prolonging life, helping people to get revenge, or some other things. As long as you can afford the equivalent value, most wishes can be realized." When Li Jingtian heard Lin Yi's words, he was stunned for a moment, and then looked at him inexplicably. Are you mentally ill? Extending life? It's not a myth or legend. At my level, I have already understood the truth in myths and legends. There has never been a force beyond nature in the world. Even for us martial artists, with the help of current science and technology, we can only make the false become true. We have long understood that there are no myths and legends in this world. If you think you can fool me just because you have mastered a little spiritual power, you are wrong. Lin Yi smiled slightly when he heard this. Since I said so, I can naturally prove the truth of my words. As he said this, Lin Yi activated the true source of life. His palms were slightly spread out and placed on his legs. At this position, people around him could not see his palms, only Li Jingtian, who was sitting opposite him, could see them. Then Li Jingtian saw a scene that shocked him for the rest of his life. A trace of light appeared on Lin Yi's palm. It was pure light, light of various colors. Black, white, cyan, purple, blue, countless kinds of light gathered in Lin Yi's hand and turned into a colorful ball of light. Li Jingtian's pupils shrank, as if he saw the most incredible thing in the world. His mind felt everything, and he could clearly feel that the evenly distributed heat around him was gathering towards the palm of the man in front of him. This was obviously a phenomenon that violated the laws of thermodynamics. Junior high school physics has already taught that heat can only be transferred from high to low, not from low to high. In the end, the world will return to heat death, and everything will die. This is an unchangeable increase in entropy. At this time, the ball of light gathered in Lin Yi's palm exuded a faint heat, which was much higher than the average temperature of the surroundings. A kind of creepy feeling permeated from the soul, and Li Jingtian had goosebumps all over his body. His whole body entered a state of high alert in an instant, and every muscle in his body was trembling, as if he would turn into a prehistoric beast in the next moment. At this time, the ball of light in Lin Yi's hand slowly dissipated again, turning into dots of light that melted into the air around him, leaving no trace. That's all for today. If Mr. Li Jingtian has any wish that he wants to realize, you can come to me. I'm honest here, and we exchange equal value. As he said that, Lin Yi had already stood up from his seat and walked towards Jin, who had been standing not far away in the restaurant. Just now, Jin was affected by Li Jingtian's power. After Lin Yi arrived in front of Li Jingtian and interrupted the other party's power, he woke up. When he woke up, he saw Li Jingtian and Lin Yi sitting together, and he felt ugly in his heart, so he didn't dare to walk over. At this time, Lin Yi came in front of him, looked at him and said, "Let's go." Soon they came to the bottom of the Oriental Pearl Tower, and Jin followed behind Lin Yi in silence. His face was slightly dim. The first time he went out with the shop owner, he made such a big fool of himself, so he was naturally unhappy. Lin Yi's voice rang in his ears, "Don't worry, you are just an ordinary person, and you are naturally powerless against this kind of power. Don't worry, after I understand the power system of this world, you will also become powerful." "Yes, boss." Hearing that Lin Yi did not blame him, he was slightly relieved at this time. This incident was just an episode. Lin Yi continued to wander around Wanjin city leisurely. He was still looking for people like Li Jingtian. Then he was surprised to find that there were actually quite a few people like Li Jingtian in Wanjin city, at least more than 10, although most of them were discovered by Lin Yi through countless buildings through the True Destiny solution. But it also proved one thing to Lin Yi, that this world does have a unique power system. And he also found some people who have practiced this kind of power in the streets and alleys. But most of them are still only at the perfect practice of the body, and have not stepped into the spiritual and mental level. During this process, Lin Yi also discovered a strange phenomenon in Wanjin city. There are many martial arts schools in Wanjin city, and these martial arts schools teach various types of boxing. And these boxing methods are for physical training, although they only teach the basics and simple parts. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 659. However, this also gave Lin Yi an inspiration. He could learn various boxing techniques from these martial arts schools and then summarize them. With his cultivation of the heavenly immortal Dao, he could deduce and extend these boxing techniques and try to find out the secret of the power system of this world. Any power system is summarized after thousands of trials and countless attempts. Although he is a heavenly immortal, he is not sure that he can deduce all these deep-level things. After all, the martial arts is like a mountain between a layer and a mountain. If you don't understand it, you really don't understand it. After thinking about his gaze, he looked at Jin. "Now I'll give you a task. I'll give you a sum of money, and you go to the martial arts schools of various schools in Wanjin city and learn all their boxing techniques. You only need to learn and understand their basic boxing techniques once. After you come back, show me these boxing techniques." Jin's face fell when he heard this. "Manager, I'm already this old, and others don't dare to teach me if I go to learn. If I can't keep up with the physical strength, and suddenly get sick or something, others will be in big trouble. Generally, this kind of martial arts school accepts disciples, even if you pay to study. There is an age limit, and it will not exceed 30 years old. Jin looked at Lin Yi helplessly, his face full of confusion. Lin Yi smiled when he heard this, and a 30-year life crystal appeared silently in his hand. This is a life crystal, which contains 30 years of life. If you swallow it, you will return to your peak state in your 20s. But this will be deducted from your future salary, understand? Jin looked at the thumb-sized, milky white crystal in Lin Yi's hand, his face full of desire. It was a desire from the heart, and the moment he saw the milky white crystal, he couldn't move his eyes away. He felt that his body was constantly sending him alarms, and he must snatch this thing and swallow it. He took the milky white crystal with trembling hands, and then he couldn't bear it for a moment and swallowed it directly. At this time, the two of them were walking in an alley, and there were no people around, and no one could see Jin's changes. He was trembling all over, his muscles began to become firm, his skin began to become elastic, his hair became black, and the wrinkles on his face were disappearing rapidly. In just a few minutes, he became a young man in his 20s, in the golden years of his life. Looking at his smooth skin, Jin trembled slightly all over, which was incredible. His life is really back, and his youth is back. He is in the golden years of his life. At this moment, his excitement is beyond description, and he looks at Lin Yi with even more awe. Manager, rest assured, I will complete the task perfectly. For the first time, Jin put Lin Yi completely in his heart and knew clearly what he would do in the future. No one in the world understands the importance of youth and life better than him. An opportunity for immortality is in front of him. This is what countless emperors have pursued throughout the history of Blue Star. And now this opportunity is in front of him. If he doesn't seize it, he will be the biggest fool in the world. Okay, I don't need you to accompany me anymore. Go and complete the task I gave you. I'm going back. Yes, manager, Jin bowed respectfully, and he didn't stand up until Lin Yi disappeared at the end of the alley. At this moment, he was full of energy, and he secretly vowed in his heart that he must thoroughly consolidate his position in Lin Yi's heart. He must seize immortality and will never give up. Jin came to the martial arts street in Wanjin City alone. Because of the special nature of martial arts, they were restricted to one street to open a school and recruit disciples. These martial arts schools often held competitions to compete for ranking. The higher the ranking, the more people will come to learn, and the more disciples, the higher the income. Society is a place of fame and fortune, and no industry can escape it. In order to fight for fame and fortune, people have been beaten to death, but most of the fights are still restrained. After all, it is a civilized society now, and real life and death struggles are not allowed. And if you lose this time, you can win back next time, so the ranking of this street will always change. And now he wants to become a disciple of the last ranked one. Because he feels that Lin Yi should be interested in the martial arts of this world, the best thing he can do is to get a few complete sets of martial arts. Then collect some auxiliary basic martial arts, which will be more conducive to Lin Yi's understanding of martial arts. It has been a day since he entered the Eurozwia, and he also learned about the existence of martial arts from Brandy and others. He witnessed the terrifying power beyond ordinary people, which was a power that the martial artists in this world did not possess. Therefore, in his opinion, the martial arts in this world were far weaker than what Brandy and the others had mastered. Lin Yi asked him to learn these martial arts, and he thought it was just to understand the martial arts system of this world. However, this was only because he was an ordinary person and could not feel the martial arts secrets of this world at all, so he thought so. The martial arts hall he chose was one of the weakest in the martial arts street, called Falcon Martial Arts Hall. Dong dong dong. The door of Falcon Martial Arts Hall was knocked, and a man opened the door. He was wearing a black training suit, only 1.9 meters tall, with well-proportioned muscles, and the whole person gave people a lean feeling. His eyes were very sharp, and the moment he saw Jin, he felt that he couldn't look directly at him. It seemed that he was disrespecting a king, and he felt a little weak and fearful in his heart for some reason, and wanted to lower his head. But he thought of the task given to him by Lin Yi, and the Wanchaiwu behind him, any one of whom could be invincible. He immediately felt confident, forced himself to calm down, and looked directly at the man in front of him. "Hello, I'm here to learn boxing." The sharp-eyed man saw that Jin could withstand his gaze, and was slightly surprised, looking him up and down. A somewhat dry, frosted voice slowly sounded, "Learn boxing? Come in." After entering the Falcon boxing gym, Jin saw a martial arts training ground, which was about 100 square meters. At this time, there were more than a dozen people practicing boxing inside. They were sweating profusely, and were practicing some basic skills. But Jin could see that these people were weak and didn't seem to have much strength. The thin man's dry voice sounded again, like a loud bell, waking him up. "Let's go in and talk." "Okay." The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 660. I followed the man into the lobby at the end of the martial arts training ground. There were several seats and some simple decorations, which looked quite ancient. The lean man looked at Jin and whispered, "Please sit down and I'll call the master." Jin sat on a chair and looked around carefully. The furniture here seems to be a few years old. It looks antique and probably of great value. About 10 minutes after the lean man entered the back hall, he walked out accompanied by an old man. The old man looked to be in his 60s, with a red face. Although he looked old, he had a sense of vitality. This man was wearing an improved version of a green shirt and looked a bit like an ancient teacher. The old man sat on the Grand Master's chair in the center and looked at Jin. "I don't know what to call this person. My name is Jin, the harp of strings, the wine of fine wines. I came here this time to learn boxing skills at your martial arts school. But what I want to learn is real, not what those people outside practice. That's what I'm paid to do." Crash. 10 red gold coins appeared on the small coffee table next to Jin's left hand. "This is 10% pure gold, worth at least 1 million Chinese dollars. Seeing Jin making such a generous move, the old man was slightly surprised. He looked Jin up and down and said with a smile still on his face, "I don't know why you came to my Falcon Martial Arts School, my guest. With your financial resources, you should be able to go to a better martial arts gym, right?" Jin smiled and said, "The reason is simple, because those martial arts schools are big and it takes a lot of time to learn their essence, but I don't have much time to waste. There are more than a dozen martial arts schools on this martial arts street. In fact, they are all my targets. But I want to start with the lowest ranked martial arts schools to learn your true traditions. Then go to other martial arts schools to learn the boxing techniques they spread. Integrate hundreds of schools of thought and create my own boxing technique. So, I wonder if the old gentleman can teach me the true story. There are so many martial arts, and each one has its own training methods, fighting methods, and secret methods. How can it be so easy to learn the true method without considering it for 10 years? That's the guy we eat with. Although millions are a lot, they can't buy this true secret. But I can pass it on to you 70%. Although you can't reach the peak of my lineage, you can still have 70% success. If you really have the talent to smelt 100 schools of thought, then after you smelt 100 schools of thought, you might be able to surpass me, but I don't know." After hearing what the old man said, Jin thought for a while and said, "Okay, 70% is enough." At this time, a trace of confusion and surprise flashed in the eyes of the lean man behind the old man. He has never seen anyone as arrogant as Jin. He has never even learned martial arts, yet he dares to talk about smelting hundreds of schools and forming his own sect. It's like slipping into the world, and he couldn't be more stupid. And the funniest thing is that he used millions to buy other people's core true stories. This is a guy who is eating, how can he just sell something casually? Looking down at his master, he was willing to teach him 70% of Falcon boxing. This man naturally knew his master's plan. How could he not waste the money that was sent to him? As long as the core was not lost, he would be able to reach 70% of the martial arts. Even if the other party had mastered 70% of martial arts, he would not be able to surpass them. One sentence of truth is preached, and tens of thousands of books are falsely preached. The most profound part of martial arts lies in the core. Everything else is just the skin and bones, not the essence. Although one can strengthen one's body and even become strong, it is impossible to reach a higher level. Boxing techniques are finally formed through countless experiments and explorations, and dozens or hundreds of generations of improvement, and they contain extremely high technology. That's why the master is not worried about the other party being able to cultivate the core of martial arts, because this is absolutely impossible. Jin reached an agreement with the director of Falcon Martial Arts School and quickly signed a contract agreement. This contractual agreement has legal effect. This world seems to pay special attention to things like martial arts, and even promotes them vigorously. There are also special laws as a basis to protect the intellectual property rights of various martial arts sects. This allows martial arts schools to teach their apprentices with confidence. No apprentice can reveal the boxing skills they learn, otherwise they will bear legal responsibility. Moreover, there are cameras in various public places in China, which can monitor the movements of these people at any time. At night, Jin returned to the everything house. It's just that he was a little tired, because in the Falcon Martial Arts School, he learned the basics of Falcon boxing. The 3 swoops of the Falcon took him several hours. When he completely grasped the prototype, it was already past 8 o'clock in the evening. Ring ring ring. Pushing open the door of Wan Shishi, he saw Lin Yi sitting in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, and quickly walked over. Store manager, I have learned the basic boxing technique of Falcon Martial Arts School, Falcon 3 pounces. Lin Yi glanced at him and said, let's go to the backyard and show me what you have learned. At this time, Brandy, Sakuragi, Shirley, Lao Wei, and others were all in the lobby. They all looked at Jin with curiosity. When Lin Yi came back, he told them that the martial arts system in this world was very strange and could involve the soul. It made them very interested. Soon everyone gathered in the backyard, and Jin stood alone in the middle of the backyard. Being watched by everyone in the Eurozwia, he looked a little nervous and uncomfortable. Lin Yi looked at him and said, let's start, let's see. Jin nodded, took a stance, and began to practice the Falcon 3 pounces slowly in front of Lin Yi. His movements were slow and stiff. After all, he had only practiced for an afternoon, and he had neither formed instincts nor conditioned reflexes. He even felt that his memory was not very clear. At this time, Lin Yi's eyes flashed with the light of the true destiny. He watched every move of Jin and analyzed and understood the role of these moves. When Jin finished the set of basic Falcon 3 pounces, Lin Yi nodded slightly. This set of basic boxing has 2 functions, coordinating the body's muscles and strengthening the leg, hand, and back muscles. If you want to reach the peak level, you need a long time of practice, but I can speed up the completion of this matter. As he said, Lin Yi came to Jin's side and said to Jin, continue boxing. You are not allowed to stop until I stop. Jin nodded and had no choice but to practice boxing again from the beginning. From his first move, Lin Yi raised his right hand and slapped a part of his body.